Chapter 30 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Swamp plants. Skunk cabbage. Synonyms: Dracontium foetidum. Other common names: Dracontium, skunkweed, polecat weed, swamp cabbage, meadow cabbage, collard, fetid, hellebone, stinking poke, pockweed. Habitat and range: swamps and other wet places from Canada to Florida, Iowa, and Minnesota abound with this ill-smelling herb. Description of plant. Most of the common names applied to this plant, as well as the scientific names, are indicative of the most striking characteristic of this early spring visitor, namely the rank, offensive carrion odor that emanates from it. Skunk cabbage is one of the very earliest of our spring flowers, appearing in February or March, but it is safe to say that it is not likely to suffer extermination at the hand of the enthusiastic gatherer of spring flowers. In the latitude of Washington, skunk cabbage has been known to be in flower in December. It is a curious plant, with its hood-shaped, purplish-striped flowers appearing before the leaves. It belongs to the arum family, Araceae, and is a perennial. The flower is in the form of a thick, ovate, swollen spathe, about 3 to 6 inches in height, the top pointed and curved inward, spotted and striped, with purple and yellowish-green. The spathe is not like that of the wild turnip or calla lily, to which family this plant also belongs, but the edges are rolled inward, completely hiding the spadix. In this plant, the spadix is not spike-like as in the wild turnip, but is generally somewhat globular, entirely covered with numerous dull purple flowers. After the fruit has ripened, the spadix will be found to have grown considerably, the spathe meantime having decayed. The leaves, which appear after the flower, are numerous and very large, about 1 to 3 feet in length and about 1 foot in width. They are thin in texture but prominently nerved with fleshy nerves and are borne on deeply channeled stems. Description of rootstock. Skunk cabbage has a thick, straight, reddish-brown rootstock, from 3 to 5 inches long and about 2 inches in diameter, and having a whorl of crowded, fleshy roots which penetrate the soil to considerable depth. The dried article of commerce consists of either the entire rootstock and roots, which are dark brown and wrinkled within, or of very much compressed, wrinkled, transverse slices. When bruised, the root has the characteristic fetid odor of the plant and possesses a sharp, acrid taste, both of which become less the longer the root is kept. Collection, prices, and uses. The rootstock of skunk cabbage are collected early in spring, soon after the appearance of the flower, or after the seeds have ripened in August or September. It should be carefully dried, either in its entire state or deprived of the roots and cut into transverse slices. Skunk cabbage loses its odor and acridity with age and should therefore not be kept longer than 1 season. The range of prices is from 4 to 7 cents a pound. Skunk cabbage, official from 1820 to 1880, is used in affections of the respiratory organs, in nervous disorders, rheumatism, and dropsical complaints. American hellebore, Veratrum viridae, pharmacopoeial name, veratrum. Other common names: true veratrum, green veratrum, American veratrum, green hellebore, swamp hellebore, big hellebore, false hellebore, bearcorn, bugbane, bugwort, devil's bite, earth gall, Indian poke, itchweed, tickleweed, duckretter. Habitat and range. American hellebore is native in rich wet woods, swamps, and wet meadows, its range extending from Canada, Alaska, and Minnesota south to Georgia. Description of plant. Early in spring, usually in company with the skunk cabbage, the large bright green leaves of American hellebore make their way through the soil, their straight, erect leaf, spears, forming a conspicuous feature of the yet scanty spring vegetation. Later in the season, a stout and erect leafy stem is sent up, sometimes growing as tall as 6 feet. It is solid and round, pale green, very leafy, and closely surrounded by the sheathing bases of the leaves, unbranched except in the flowering head. The leaves are hairy, prominently nerved, folded or pleated like a fan. They have no stems, but their bases encircle or sheath the main stalk, and are very large, especially the lower ones, which are from 6 to 12 inches in length, from 3 to 6 inches in width, and broadly oval. As they approach the top of the plant, the leaves become narrower. The flowers, which appear from May to July, are greenish-yellow and numerous, and are borne in rather open clusters. American hellebore belongs to the bunch flower family, Melanthiaceae, and is a perennial. The species is a very near relative of the European white hellebore, Veratrum album, and in fact has by some been regarded as identical with it, or at least as a variety of it. It is taller than Veratrum album and has narrower leaves and greener flowers. Both species are official in the United States Pharmacopoeia. Description of rootstock. The fresh rootstock of American hellebore is ovoid or obconical, upright, thick and fleshy. The upper part of it arranged in layers, the lower part of it more solid and producing numerous whitish roots from all sides. In the fresh state it has a rather strong, disagreeable odor. As found in commerce, American hellebore rootstock is sometimes entire, but more generally sliced, and is of a light brown or dark brown color externally and internally yellowish-white. The roots, which are from 4 to 8 inches long, have a shriveled appearance and are brown or yellowish. There is no odor to the dried rootstock, but when powdered it causes violent sneezing. The rootstock, which has a bitter and very acrid taste, is poisonous. Collection, prices, and uses. American hellebore should be dug in autumn after the leaves have died and washed and dried carefully, either in the whole state or sliced in various ways. It deteriorates with age and should therefore not be kept longer than a year. The adulterations sometimes met with are the rootstocks of related plants, and the skunk cabbage is also occasionally found mixed with it, but this is probably unintentional, as the two plants usually grow close together. Collectors of American hellebore root receive from about 3 to 10 cents a pound. American hellebore, official in the United States Pharmacopoeia, is an acrid narcotic poison and has emetic, diaphoretic, and sedative properties. Water eringo, Eryngium ucifolium, Michele. Synonym, Eryngium aquaticum. Other common names, Eryngium, eringo, button snakeroot, corn snakeroot, rattlesnake master, rattlesnake weed, rattlesnake flag. Habitat and range. Although sometimes occurring on dry land, water eringo usually inhabits swamps and low wet ground, from the pine barrens of New Jersey westward to Minnesota and south to Texas and Florida. Description of plant. The leaves of this plant are grass-like in form, rigid, 1 to 2 feet long and about 1/2 inch or a trifle more in width. They are linear with parallel veins, pointed, generally clasped at the base, and the margins briskly soft, slender spines. The stout furrowed stem reaches a height of from 2 to 6 feet and is generally unbranched except near the top. The insignificant whitish flowers are borne in dense ovate, globular, stout-stemmed heads, appearing from June to September, and the seed heads that follow are ovate and scaly. Water eringo belongs to the parsley family, Apiaceae, and is native in this country. Description of rootstock. The stout rootstock is very knotty, with numerous short branches, and produces many thick, rather straight roots, both rootstock and roots of a dark brown color, the latter wrinkled lengthwise. The inside of the rootstock is yellowish-white. Water eringo has a somewhat peculiar, slightly aromatic odor, and a sweetish mucilaginous taste at first, followed by some bitterness and pungency. Collection, prices, and uses. The root of this plant is collected in autumn and brings from 5 to 10 cents a pound. Water eringo is an old remedy, and one of its early uses, as the several common names indicate, was for the treatment of snake bites. It was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1860, and is employed now as a diuretic and expectorant and for promoting perspiration. In large doses, it acts as an emetic, and the root, when chewed, excites a flow of saliva. It is said to resemble Seneca snake root in action. Yellow jasmine, or jessamine, Gelsemium sempervirens. Pharmacopoeial name, Gelsemium. Other common names, Carolina jasmine or jessamine, Carolina wild woodbine, evening trumpet flower. Habitat and range. Yellow jasmine is a plant native to the south, found along the banks of streams, in woods, lowlands, and thickets, generally near the coast, from the eastern part of Virginia to Florida and Texas, south to Mexico and Guatemala. Description of plant. This highly ornamental climbing or trailing plant is abundantly met with in the woods of the southern states, its slender stems festooned over trees and fences, and making its presence known by the delightful perfume exhaled by its flowers, filling the air with fragrance that is almost overpowering wherever the yellow jasmine is very abundant. The smooth, shining stems of this beautiful vine sometimes reach a length of 20 feet. The leaves are evergreen, lance-shaped, entire, 1½ to 3 inches long, rather narrow, borne on short stems and generally remaining on the vine during the winter. The flowers, which appear from January to April, are bright yellow, about 1 to 1½ inches long, the corolla funnel-shaped. They are very fragrant but poisonous, and it is stated the eating of honey derived from jasmine flowers has brought about fatal results. Yellow jasmine is a perennial and belongs to a family that is noted for its poisonous properties, namely the Logania family, Loganiaceae, which numbers among its members such powerful poisonous agents as the strychnine-producing tree. Description of rootstock. The rootstock of the yellow jasmine is horizontal and runs near the surface of the ground, attaining great lengths, 15 feet or more. It is branched and here and there produces fibrous rootlets. When freshly removed from the ground, it is very yellow, with a peculiar odor and bitter taste. For the drug trade, it is generally cut into pieces varying from 1 inch to 6 inches in length, and when dried, consists of cylindrical sections about 1 inch in thickness. The roots, of course, thinner. The bark is thin, yellowish-brown, with fine, silky bast fibers, and the wood is tough and pale yellow, breaking with a splintery fracture and showing numerous fine rays radiating from a small central pith. Yellow jasmine has a bitter taste and a pronounced heavy odor. Collection, prices, and uses. The root of yellow jasmine is usually collected just after the plant has come into flower, and is cut into pieces from 1 to 6 inches long. It is often adulterated with portions of the stems, but these can be distinguished by their thinness and dark purplish color. The prices range from 3 to 5 cents a pound. Yellow jasmine, which is official in the United States Pharmacopoeia, is used for its powerful effect on the nervous system. Sweet flag, Acornus calamus. Pharmacopoeial name, calamus. Other common names, sweet cane, sweet grass, sweet myrtle, sweet rush, sweet sedge, sweet seg, sweet root, cinnamon sedge, myrtle flag, myrtle grass, myrtle sedge, beewort. Habitat and range. This plant frequents wet and muddy places and borders on streams from Nova Scotia to Minnesota, southward to Florida and Texas, also occurring in Europe and Asia. It is usually partly immersed in water, and is generally found in company with the cattail and other water-loving species of flag. Description of plant. The sword-like leaves of the sweet flag resemble those of other flags so much that before the plant is in flower it is difficult to recognize simply by the appearance of its leaves. The leaves of the blue flag, or poison flag as it has been called, are very similar to those of the sweet flag, and this resemblance often leads to cases of poisoning among children, who thus mistake one for the other. However, as the leaves of the sweet flag are fragrant, the odor will be a means of recognizing it. Of course, when the sweet flag is in flower, the identification of the plant is easy. The sheathing leaves of this native perennial, which belongs to the arum family, Araceae, are from 2 to 6 feet in height and about 1 inch in width. They are sharp-pointed and have a ridged midrib running their entire length. The flowering head produced from the side of the stalk consists of a fleshy spike, sometimes 3½ inches long and about 1/2 inch in thickness, closely covered with very small greenish-yellow flowers which appear from May to July. Description of rootstock. The long, creeping rootstock of the sweet flag is thick and fleshy, somewhat spongy, and producing numerous rootlets. The odor is aromatic and agreeable, and taste pungent and bitter. The dried article, as found in the stores, consists of entire or split pieces of various lengths, from 3 to 6 inches, light brown on the outside with blackish spots, sharply wrinkled lengthwise. The upper surface marked obliquely with dark leaf scars, and the lower surface showing many small circular scars, which at first glance give one the impression that the root is worm-eaten, but which are the remains of rootlets that have been removed from the rootstock. Internally, the rootstock is whitish and of a spongy texture. The aromatic odor and pungent bitter taste are retained in the dried article. Collection, prices, and uses. The United States Pharmacopoeia directs that the unpeeled rhizome or rootstock be used. It is collected either in early spring or late in autumn. It is pulled or grubbed from the soft earth, freed from adhering dirt, and the rootlets removed, as these are not so aromatic and more bitter. The rootstock is then carefully dried, sometimes by means of moderate heat. Sweet flag deteriorates with age and is subject to the attacks of worms. It loses about 3/4 of its weight in drying. Some of the sweet flag found in commerce consists of handsome white pieces. These usually come from Germany and have been peeled before drying, but they are not so strong and aromatic as the unpeeled roots. Unpeeled sweet flag brings from 3 to 6 cents a pound. Sweet flag is employed as an aromatic stimulant and tonic in feeble digestion. The dried root is frequently chewed for the relief of dyspepsia. Blue flag, Iris versicolor. Other common names: iris, flag lily, liver lily, snake lily, poison flag, water flag, American fleur de lis, or flower de luce. Habitat and range. Blue flag delights in wet, swampy localities, making its home in marshes, thickets, and wet meadows from Newfoundland to Manitoba, south to Florida and Arkansas. Description of plant. The flowers of all of the species belonging to this genus are similar and are readily recognized by their rather peculiar form, the 3 outer segments or parts reflexed or turned back, and the 3 inner segments standing erect. Blue flag is about 2 to 3 feet in height, with an erect stem sometimes branched near the top, and sword-shaped leaves which are shorter than the stem, from 1/2 to 1 inch in width, showing a slight grayish bloom and sheathing at the base. This plant is a perennial belonging to the iris family, Iridaceae, and is a native of this country. June is generally regarded as the month for the flowering of the blue flag, although it may be said to be in flower from May to July, depending on the locality. The flowers are large and very handsome, each stem bearing from 2 to 6 or more. They consist of 6 segments or parts, the 3 outer ones turned back and the 3 inner ones erect and much smaller. The flowers are usually purplish blue, the claw or narrow base of the segments variegated with yellow, green, or white, and marked with purple veins. All of the species belonging to the genus are more or less variegated in color, hence the name iris, meaning rainbow, and the specific name versicolor, meaning various colors. The name poison flag has been applied to it on account of the poisonous effect it has produced in children, who, owing to the close resemblance of the plants before reaching the flowering stage, sometimes mistake it for sweet flag. The seed capsule is oblong, about 1½ inches, and contains numerous seeds. Description of rootstock. Blue flag has a thick, fleshy, horizontal rootstock, branched and producing long, fibrous roots. It resembles sweet flag, calamus, and has been mistaken for it. The sections of the rootstock of blue flag, however, are flattened above and rounded below. The scars of the leaf sheaths are in the form of rings, whereas in sweet flag the rootstock is cylindrical and the scars left by the leaf sheaths are obliquely transverse. Furthermore, there is a difference in the arrangement of the roots on the rootstock. the scars left by the roots in blue flag being close together, generally nearer the larger end, while in sweet flag the disposition of the roots along the rootstock is quite regular. Blue flag is greyish-brown on the outside when dried, and sweet flag is light brown or fawn-coloured. Blue flag has no well-marked odour, and the taste is acrid and nauseous, and in sweet flag there is a pleasant odour and bitter, pungent taste. Collection, prices, and uses. Blue flag is collected in autumn, and usually brings from 7 to 10 cents a pound. Great scarcity of blue flag root was reported from the producing districts in the autumn of 1906. It is an old remedy, the Indians esteeming it highly for stomach troubles, and it is said that it was sometimes cultivated by them in nearby ponds on account of its medicinal value. It has also been used as a domestic remedy, and is regarded as an alterative, diuretic, and purgative. It was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia of 1890. Crane's bill, Geranium maculatum. Pharmacopoeial name, geranium. Other common names, spotted cranesbill, wild cranesbill, stork's bill, spotted geranium, wild geranium, alum root, alum bloom, chocolate flower, crowfoot, dovefoot, old maid's nightcap, shameface. Habitat and range. Cranesbill flourishes in low grounds and open woods from Newfoundland to Manitoba, south to Georgia and Missouri. Description of plant. This pretty perennial plant belongs to the geranium family, Geraniaceae, and will grow sometimes to a height of 2 feet, but more generally it is only about a foot in height. The entire plant is more or less covered with hairs and is erect and usually unbranched. The leaves are nearly circular or somewhat heart-shaped in outline, 3 to 6 inches wide, deeply parted into 3 or 5 parts, each division again cleft and toothed. The basal leaves are borne on long stems, while those above have short stems. The flowers, which appear from April to June, are borne in a loose cluster. They are rose-purple, pale or violet in colour, about 1 inch or 1½ inches wide. The petals delicately veined and woolly at the base, and the sepals or calyx lobes with a bristle-shaped point, soft, hairy, the margins having a fringe of more bristly hairs. The fruit consists of a beaked capsule, springing open elastically and dividing into 5 cells, each cell containing 1 seed. Description of rootstock. When removed from the earth, the rootstock of cranesbill is about 2 to 4 inches long, thick, with numerous branches bearing the young buds for next season's growth, and scars showing the remains of stems of previous years, brown outside, white and fleshy internally, and with several stout roots. When dry, the rootstock turns a darker brown, is finely wrinkled externally, and has a rough, spiny appearance, caused by the shrinking of the buds and branches, and the numerous stem scars with which the root is studded. Internally it is of a somewhat purplish colour. Cranesbill root is without odour, and the taste is very astringent. Collection, prices, and uses. Cranesbill root depends for its medicinal value on its astringent properties, and as its astringency is due to the tannin content, the root should of course be collected in that season of the year when it is richest in that constituent. Experiments have proved that the yield of tannin in cranesbill is greatest just before flowering, which is in April or May, according to locality. It should therefore be collected just before the flowering periods, and not, as is commonly the case, in autumn. The price of this root ranges from 4 to 8 cents a pound. Cranesbill root, which is official in the United States Pharmacopoeia, is used as a tonic and astringent. End of Chapter 30, read by Sandra in Canada, 2025. Chapter 31 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Field Plants. Dandelion, Taraxacum officinale, Weber, A. Synonyms: Taraxacum taraxacum, karst, A. Taraxacum densleonis, Pharmacopoeial name, Taraxacum. Other common names, blowball, cankerwort, doonhead, clock, fortune teller, horse gowan, Irish daisy, yellow gowan, 1 o'clock. Habitat and range. With the exception possibly of a few localities in the south, the dandelion is at home almost everywhere in the United States. Being a familiar weed in meadows and waste places, and especially in lawns, it has been naturalized in this country from Europe and is distributed as a weed in all civilized parts of the world. Description of plant. It is hardly necessary to give a description of the dandelion, as almost everyone is familiar with the coarsely toothed, smooth shining green leaves, the golden yellow flowers which open in the morning and only in fair weather, and the round fluffy seed heads of this only too plentiful weed of the lawns. In spring, the young tender leaves are much sought after by the colored market women about Washington, who collect them by the basketful and sell them for greens and salad. Dandelion is a perennial belonging to the chicory family, Chicoreaceae, and is in flower practically throughout the year. The entire plant contains a white milky juice. Description of root. The dandelion has a large, thick and fleshy taproot, sometimes measuring 20 inches in length. In commerce, dandelion root is usually found in pieces 3 to 6 inches long, dark brown on the outside and strongly wrinkled lengthwise. It breaks with a short fracture and shows the thick whitish bark marked with circles of milk ducts and a thin woody center which is yellow and porous. It is practically without odor and has a bitter taste. Collections and uses. Late in summer and in fall, the milky juice becomes thicker and the bitterness increases, and this is the time to collect dandelion root. It should be carefully washed and thoroughly dried. Dandelion roots lose considerably in drying, weighing less than half as much as the fresh roots. The dried root should not be kept too long, as drying diminishes its medicinal activity. It is official in the United States Pharmacopoeia. Dandelion is used as a tonic in diseases of the liver and in dyspepsia. Imports and prices. Most of the dandelion root found on the market is collected in Central Europe. There has been an unusually large demand for dandelion root during the season of 1907, and according to the weekly records contained in the Oil, Paint and Drug Reporter, the imports entered at the Port of New York from January 1, 1907 to the end of May amounted to 47,000 pounds. The price ranges from 4 to 10 cents a pound. Soapwort, Saponaria officinalis. Other common names, Saponaria, saponary, common soapwort, bouncing bet, soaproot, bruisewort, Boston pink, chimney pink, crow soap, hedge pink, old maid's pink, fuller's herb, lady by the gate, London pride, latherwort, mock gilliflower, scourwort, sheepweed, Sweet Betty, Wild Sweet William, Wood's Phlox, World's Wonder. Habitat and range. By one or another of its many common names, this plant naturalized from Europe is known almost everywhere, occurring along roadsides and in waste places. Description of plant. Soapwort is a rather pretty, herbaceous perennial, 1 to 2 feet high, and belonging to the pink family, Solanaceae. Its smooth, stout, and erect stem is leafy and sparingly branched. The leaves ovate, 2 to 3 inches long, smooth, prominently ribbed, and pointed at the apex. The bright-looking, crowded clusters of pink or in shady localities whitish flowers appear from about June until far along in September. The 5 petals of the corolla are furnished with long claws, or in other words, they are narrowly lengthened towards the base and inserted within the tubular and pale green calyx. The seed capsule is oblong and one-celled. Description of root. Soapwort spreads by means of its stolons or underground runners, but the roots, which are rather long, are the parts employed in medicine. These are cylindrical, tapering toward the apex, more or less branched and wrinkled lengthwise. The whitish wood is covered with a brownish red, rather thick bark, and the roots break with a short, smooth fracture. It is at first sweetish, bitter, and mucilaginous, followed by a persistently acrid taste, but it has no odor. Collection, prices, and uses. As already indicated, the roots without the runners should be collected either in spring or autumn. With water they form a lather like soap, whence the common names soapwort, soaproot, latherwort, etc. are derived. The price ranges from 5 to 10 cents a pound. The roots are employed in medicine for their tonic, alterative, and diaphoretic properties. The leaves are also used. Burdock, Arctium lapa. Synonym, Lapa major, Gaetern. Pharmacopoeial name, Lapa. Other common names, cockle button, cuckold dock, beggar's buttons, her-burr, stick buttons, hardock, bardane. Habitat and range. Burdock, one of our most common weeds, was introduced from the Old World. It grows along roadsides, in fields, pastures, and waste places, being very abundant in the eastern and central states and in some scattered localities in the west. Description of plant. Farmers are only too well acquainted with this coarse, unsightly weed. During the first year of its growth, this plant, which is a biennial belonging to the aster family, Asteraceae, produces only a rosette of large, thin leaves from a long, tapering root. In the second year, a round, fleshy, and branched stem is produced, the plant, when full grown, measuring from 3 to 7 feet in height. This stem is branched, grooved, and hairy, bearing very large leaves, the lower ones often measuring 18 inches in length. The leaves are placed alternately on the stem, on long, solid, deeply furrowed leaf stalks. They are thin in texture, smooth on the upper surface, pale and woolly underneath, usually heart-shaped, but sometimes roundish or oval, with even wavy or toothed margins. The flowers are not produced until the second year, appearing from July until frost. Burdock flowers are purple, in small clustered heads armed with hooked tips, and the spiny burrs thus formed are a great pest, attaching themselves to clothing and to the wool and hair of animals. Burdock is a prolific seed producer, one plant bearing as many as 400,000 seeds. Description of rootstock. Burdock has a large, fleshy taproot, which when dry becomes scaly and wrinkled lengthwise, and has a blackish-brown or grayish-brown color on the outside, hard, breaking with a short, somewhat fleshy fracture, and showing the yellowish wood with a whitish, spongy center. Sometimes there is a small, white, silky tuft at the top of the root, which is formed by the remains of the basis of the leaf stalks. The odor of the root is weak and unpleasant, the taste mucilaginous, sweetish, and somewhat bitter. While the root is met with in commerce in its entire state, it is more frequently in broken pieces or in lengthwise slices, the edges of which are turned inward. The roots of other species of Arctium are also employed. Collection, prices, and uses. Burdock root is official, and the United States Pharmacopoeia directs that it be collected from plants of the first year's growth, either of Arctium lapa or of other species of Arctium. As burdock has a rather large, fleshy root, it is difficult to dry and is apt to become moldy, and for this reason it is better to slice the root lengthwise, which will facilitate the drying process. The price ranges from 5 to 10 cents a pound. The best root is said to come from Belgium, where great care is exercised in its collection and curing. Burdock root is used as an alterative in blood and skin diseases. The seeds and fresh leaves are also used medicinally to a limited extent. Yellow dock, Rumex crispus. Other common names, Rumex, curled dock, narrow dock, sour dock. Habitat and range. This troublesome weed, introduced from Europe, is now found throughout the United States, occurring in cultivated as well as in waste ground, among rubbish heaps, and along the roadside. Description of plant. Yellow dock is a perennial plant belonging to the buckwheat family, Polygonaceae. It has a deep, spindle-shaped root, from which arises an erect, angular, and furrowed stem, attaining a height of from 2 to 4 feet. The stem is branched near the top and leafy, bearing numerous long, dense clusters formed by drooping groups of inconspicuous green flowers placed in circles round the stem. The flowers are produced from June to August, and the fruits which follow are in the form of small triangular nuts, like the grain of buckwheat, to which family the dock belongs. So long as the fruits are green and immature, they can scarcely be distinguished from the flowers, but as they ripen, the clusters take on a rusty brown color. The leaves of the yellow dock are lance-shaped, acute, with the margins strongly waved and crisped, the lower, long-stalked leaves being blunt or heart-shaped at the base from 6 to 8 inches in length, while those nearer the top are narrower and shorter, only 3 to 6 inches in length, short-stemmed or stemless. The broad-leaved dock, Rumex obtusifolius, is known also as bitter dock, common dock, blunt-leaved dock, and butter dock, is a very common weed found in waste places from the New England states to Oregon and south to Florida and Texas. It grows to about the same height as the yellow dock, to which it bears a close resemblance, differing principally in its more robust habit of growth. The stem is stouter than in yellow dock, and the leaves, which likewise are wavy along the margin, are much broader and longer. The green flowers appear from June to August and are in rather long, open clusters, the groups rather loose and far apart. Description of roots. Yellow dock root is large and fleshy, usually from 8 to 12 inches long, tapering or spindle-shaped, with few or no rootlets. When dry, it is usually twisted and prominently wrinkled, the rather thick, dark, reddish-brown bark marked with small scars. The inside of the root is whitish at first, becoming yellowish. The fracture is short, but shows some splintery fibers. The root, as it occurs in commerce, is either entire or occasionally split lengthwise. The darker-colored root of the broad-leaved dock has a number of smaller branches near the crown and more rootlets. Dock roots have but a very faint odor and a bitter, astringent taste. Collection, prices, and uses. The roots should be collected in late summer or autumn, after the fruiting tops have turned brown, then washed, either left entire or split lengthwise into halves or quarters and carefully dried. Yellow dock root ranges from 4 to 6 cents a pound. In the United States Pharmacopoeia of 1890, the roots of Rumex crispus and of some other species of Rumex were official, and both of the above-named species are used. But the yellow dock, Rumex crispus, is the species most commonly employed in medicine. The docks are largely used for purifying the blood and in the treatment of skin diseases. The young root leaves of both of the species mentioned are sometimes used in spring as potherbs. End of chapter 31, read by Sandra in Canada, 2025. Chapter 32 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Dry soil plants. Stillingia, Stillingia sylvatica. Pharmacopoeial name, Stillingia. Other common names, Queen's Delight, Queen's Root, Silverleaf, Nettle Potato. Habitat and range. This plant is found in dry sandy soil and in pine barrens from Maryland and Florida west to Kansas and Texas. Description of plant. Like most of the other members of the spurge family, Euphorbiaceae, Stillingia also contains a milky juice. This indigenous herbaceous perennial is about 1 to 3 feet in height, bright green and somewhat fleshy, with crowded leaves of a somewhat leathery texture. The leaves are practically stemless and vary greatly in form, from lance-shaped, oblong to oval and elliptical, round-toothed or saw-toothed. The pale yellow flowers, which appear from April to October, are borne in a dense terminal spike and consist of 2 kinds, male and female. The male flowers arranged in dense clusters around the upper part of the stalk, and the female flowers occurring at the base of the spike. The seeds are contained in a roundish 3-lobed capsule. Description of root. Stillingia consists of somewhat cylindrical or slenderly spindle-shaped roots from 6 inches to a foot in length, slightly branched, the yellowish-white porous wood covered with a rather thick reddish-brown wrinkled bark, the whole breaking with a fibrous fracture. As found in commerce, Stillingia is usually in short transverse sections, the ends of the sections pinkish and fuzzy with numerous fine silky bast fibers, and the bark showing scattered yellowish-brown resin cells and milk ducts. It has a peculiar unpleasant odor and a bitter, acrid, and pungent taste. Collection, prices, and uses. Stillingia root is collected in late autumn or early in spring, usually cut into short transverse sections and dried. The price ranges from 3 to 5 cents a pound. This root, which is official in the United States Pharmacopoeia, has been a popular drug in the South for more than a century and is employed principally as an alterative. American Columbo, Frasera carolinensis, synonym Frasera walteri Michele. Other common names: Frasera, meadow pride, pyramid flower, pyramid plant, Indian lettuce, yellow gentian, ground century. Habit and range: American Columbo occurs in dry soil from the western part of New York to Wisconsin, south to Georgia and Kentucky. Description of plant: during the first and second year of the growth of this plant, only the root leaves are produced. These are generally somewhat rounded at the summit, narrowed toward the base, and larger than the stem leaves, which develop in the third year. The leaves are deep green and produced mostly in whorls of 4, the stem leaves being 3 to 6 inches in length and oblong or lance-shaped. In the third year, the stem is developed and the flowers are produced from June to August. The stem is stout, erect, cylindrical, and 3 to 8 feet in height. The flowers of American Columbo are borne in large, terminal, handsome pyramidal clusters, sometimes 2 feet in length, and are greenish-yellow or yellowish-white, dotted with brown-purple. They are slender-stemmed, about 1 inch across, with a wheel-shaped, 4-parted corolla. The seeds are contained in a much compressed capsule. American Columbo is an indigenous perennial and belongs to the gentian family, Gentianaceae. Description of root: the root is long, horizontal, spindle-shaped, yellow, and wrinkled. In the fresh state it is fleshy and quite heavy. The American Columbo root of commerce, formerly in transverse slices, now generally occurs in lengthwise slices. The outside is yellowish or pale orange, and the inside spongy and pale yellow. The taste is bitter. American Columbo root resembles the official gentian root in taste and odor, and the uses are also similar. Collection, prices, and uses. The proper time for collecting American Columbo root is in the autumn of the second year, or in March or April of the third year. It is generally cut into lengthwise slices before drying. The price of American Columbo root ranges from 3 to 5 cents a pound. The dried root, which was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1880, is used as a simple tonic. In the fresh state, the root possesses emetic and cathartic properties. Couchgrass, Agropyron repens, synonym Triticum repens, pharmacopoeial name Triticum. Other common names: doggrass, quickgrass, quackgrass, quitchgrass, quakegrass, scotchgrass, twitchgrass, witchgrass, wheatgrass, creeping wheatgrass, devil's grass, dorfagrass, dorfegrass, Dutchgrass, Finn's grass, Chandler's grass. Habitat and range. Like many of our weeds, couchgrass was introduced from Europe and is now one of the worst pests the farmer has to contend with, taking possession of the cultivated ground and crowding out valuable crops. It occurs most abundantly from Maine to Maryland, westward to Minnesota, and is spreading on farms on the Pacific slope, but is rather sparingly distributed in the south. Description of plant. Couchgrass is rather coarse, 1 to 3 feet high, and when in flower very much resemble rye or beardless wheat. Several round, smooth, hollow stems thickened at the joints are produced from the long, creeping, jointed rootstock. The stems bear 5 to 7 leaves, from 3 to 12 inches long, rough on the upper surface and smooth beneath, while the long, cleft leaf sheaths are smooth. The solitary terminal flowering heads or spikes are compressed and consist of 2 rows of spikelets on a wavy and flattened axis. These heads are produced from July to September. Couchgrass belongs to the grass family, Poaceae. Description of rootstock. The pale yellow smooth rootstock is long, tough, and jointed, creeping along underneath the ground and pushing in every direction. As found in the stores, it consists of short angular pieces, from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch long, of a shining straw color and hollow. These pieces are odorless, but have a somewhat sweetish taste. Collection, prices, and uses. Couchgrass, which is official in the United States pharmacopoeia, should be collected in spring, carefully cleaned, and the rootlets removed. The root stalk, not rootlets, is then cut into short pieces about 2/5 of an inch in length, for which purpose an ordinary feed-cutting machine may be used, and thoroughly dried. Couchgrass is usually destroyed by ploughing up and burning, for if any of the joints are permitted to remain in the soil, new plants will be produced. But instead of burning, the rootstocks may be saved and prepared for the drug market in the manner above stated. The prices range from 3 to 5 cents a pound. At present, couchgrass is collected chiefly in Europe. A fluid extract is prepared from couchgrass, which is used in affections of the kidney and bladder. Echinacea. Brownaria angustifolia, D.C. Heller. Synonym: Echinacea angustifolia, D.C. Other common names: pale purple coneflower, Samson root, niggerhead in Kansas. Habitat and range. Echinacea is found in scattered patches in rich prairie soil or sandy soil from Alabama to Texas and northwestward, being most abundant in Kansas and Nebraska. Though not growing wild in the eastern states, it has succeeded well under cultivation in the testing gardens of the Department of Agriculture at Washington, D.C. Description of plant. This native herbaceous perennial, belonging to the aster family, Asteraceae, grows to a height of from 2 to 3 feet. It sends up a rather stout, bristly, hairy stem, bearing thick, rough, hairy leaves, which are broadly lance-shaped or linear lance-shaped entire, 3 to 8 inches long, narrowed at each end, and strongly 3-nerved. The lower leaves have slender stems, but as they approach the top of the plant, the stems become shorter, and some of the upper leaves are stemless. The flower heads appearing from July to October are very pretty, and the plant would do well as an ornamental in gardens. The flowers remain on the plant for a long time, and the color varies from whitish rose to pale purple. The head consists of ray flowers and disc flowers, the former constituting the petals surrounding the disc, and the disc itself being composed of small, tubular, greenish-yellow flowers. When the flowers first appear, the disc is flattened or really concave, but as the flowering progresses, it becomes conical in shape. The brown fruiting heads are conical, chaffy, stiff, and wiry. Description of root. Echinacea has a thick, blackish root, which in commerce occurs in cylindrical pieces of varying length and thickness. The dried root is grayish-brown on the outside, the bark wrinkled lengthwise and sometimes spirally twisted. It breaks with a short, weak fracture, showing yellow or greenish-yellow wood edges, which give the impression that the wood is decayed. The odor is scarcely perceptible, and the taste is mildly aromatic, afterwards becoming acrid and inducing a flow of saliva. Collection, prices, and uses. The root of Echinacea is collected in autumn and brings from 20 to 30 cents a pound. It is said that Echinacea varies greatly in quality, due chiefly to the locality in which it grows. According to J. U. Lloyd, the best quality comes from the prairie lands of Nebraska, and that from marshy places is inferior. Echinacea is said to be an ulcerative and to promote perspiration and induce a flow of saliva. The Indians used the freshly scraped roots for the cure of snake bites. Elytris farinosa. Other common names: stargrass, blazing star, mealy starwort, unicorn root, true unicorn root, unicorn plant, unicorn's horn, colic root, devil's bit, egg grass, egg root, aloe root, crow corn, huskwort. A glance at these common names will show that many have been applied to other plants, especially to Camelliarium, which, with Elytris, is so much confused. In order to guard against this confusion as much as possible, it is best not to use the common names of this plant at all, referring to it only by its generic name, Elytris. Habitat and range. Elytris occurs in dry, usually sandy soil, from Maine to Minnesota, Florida, and Tennessee. Description of plant. As stated under Camelliarium, this plant is often confused with the former by collectors and others, although there seems to be no good reason why this should be so. The plants do not resemble each other except in habit of growth. and the trouble undoubtedly arose from a confusion of the somewhat similar common names of the plants, as for instance stargrass and starwort. Elytris may be at once distinguished by the grass-like leaves which spread out on the ground in the form of a star, and by the slender spikes of rough, mealy flowers. This native perennial belonging to the lily family, Liliaceae, is an erect, slender herb, 1½ to 3 feet tall, with basal leaves only. These leaves are grass-like, from 2 to 6 inches long, and have a yellowish-green or willow-green color. As already stated, they surround the base of the stem in the form of a star. Instead of stem leaves, there are very small, leaf-like bracts placed at some distance apart on the stem. From May to July, the erect flowering spike, from 4 to 12 inches long, is produced, bearing white, urn-shaped flowers, sometimes tinged with yellow at the apex and having a rough, wrinkled, and mealy appearance. The seed capsule is ovoid, opening by 3 halves, and containing many seeds. When the flowers in the spike are still in bud, there is a suggestion of resemblance to the female spike of Camelarium, with its fruit half-formed. Several other species are recognized by botanists, namely Elytris aurea, A. lutea small, and Elytris obovata Nash. But aside from the flowers, which in aurea and lutea are yellow, and slight variations in form, such as a more protracted perianth, the differences are not so pronounced that the plants would require a detailed description here. They have undoubtedly been collected with Elytris farinosa for years, and are sufficiently like it to be readily recognized. Description of rootstock. Not only have the plants of Elytris and Camelarium been confused, but the rootstock as well. There is, however, no resemblance between them. Elytris has a horizontal rootstock from 1/2 to 1½ inches in length, rough and scaly, and almost completely hidden by the fibrous roots and remains of the basal leaves. Upon close examination, the scars of former leaf stems may be seen along the upper surface. The rootlets are from 2 to 10 inches in length, those of recent growth whitish and covered with several layers of epidermis, which gradually peel off, and the older rootlets of the rootstock, showing this epidermis already scaled off, leaving only the hard, brown, woody center. The rootstock in commerce almost invariably shows at one end a tuft of the remains of the basal leaves, which do not lose their green color. It is grayish-brown outside, whitish within, and breaks with a mealy fracture. It has no odor and a starchy taste, followed by some acridity but no bitterness. Collection, prices, and uses. Elytris should be collected in autumn, and there is no reason why collectors should make the common mistake of confusing Elytris with Camelarium. By comparing the description of Elytris with that of Camelarium, it will be seen that there is scarcely any resemblance. Elytris ranges from 30 to 40 cents a pound. As indicated under Camelarium, the medicinal properties have also been considered the same in both plants, but Elytris is now regarded of value chiefly in digestive troubles. Elytris was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1870. Wild indigo. Baptisia tinctoria, R.Br. Other common names: Baptisia, indigo weed, yellow indigo, American indigo, yellow broom, indigo broom, clover broom, broom clover, horsefly weed, shoe fly, rattlebush. Habitat and range. This native herb grows on dry, poor land and is found from Maine to Minnesota, south to Florida and Louisiana. Description of plant. Many who have been brought up in the country will recognize in the wild indigo the plant so frequently used by farmers, especially in Virginia and Maryland, to keep flies away from horses, bunches of it being fastened to the harness for this purpose. Wild indigo grows to about 2 to 3 feet in height, and the clover-like blossoms and leaves will show at once that it belongs to the same family as the common clover, namely the pea family, Fabaceae. It is an erect, much-branched, very leafy plant of compact growth, the 3-leaved bluish-green foliage somewhat resembling clover leaves. The flowers, as already stated, are like common clover flowers, that is, not like clover heads, but the single flowers composing these. They are bright yellow, about 1/2 inch in length, and are produced in numerous clusters which appear from June to September. The seed pods, on stalks longer than the calyx, are nearly globular or ovoid and are tipped with an awl-shaped style. Another species, said to possess properties similar to those of Baptisia tinctoria, and substituted for it, is Baptisia alba (R.Br.), called the white wild indigo. This plant has white flowers and is found in the southern states and on the plains of the western states. Descriptions of root. Wild indigo has a thick, knotty crown or head with several stem scars and a round, fleshy root, sending out cylindrical branches and rootlets almost 2 feet in length. The white, woody interior is covered with a thick, dark brown bark, rather scaly or dotted with small, wart-like excrescences. The root breaks with a tough, fibrous fracture. There is a scarcely perceptible odor, and the taste, which resides chiefly in the bark, is nauseous, bitter, and acrid. Collection, prices, and uses. The root of wild indigo is collected in autumn and brings from 4 to 8 cents a pound. Large doses of wild indigo are emetic and cathartic and may prove dangerous. It also has stimulant, astringent, and antiseptic properties, and is used as a local application to sores, ulcers, etc. The herb is sometimes employed like the root, and the entire plant was official from 1830 to 1840. In some sections, the young tender shoots are used for greens, like those of pokeweed, but great care must be exercised to gather them before they are too far advanced in growth, as otherwise bad results will follow. A blue coloring matter has been prepared from the plant and used as a substitute for indigo, to which, however, it is very much inferior. Pleurisy root, Asclepias tuberosa. Pharmacopoeial name, Asclepias. Other common names, butterfly weed, Canada root, Indian posy, orange root, orange swallowwort, tuber root, white root, wind root, yellow or orange milkweed. Habitat and range. Pleurisy root flourishes in the open or in the pine woods, in dry, sandy, or gravelly soil, usually along the banks of streams. Its range extends from Ontario and Maine to Minnesota, south to Florida, Texas, and Arizona, but it is found in greatest abundance in the south. Description of plant. This is a very showy and ornamental perennial plant, indigenous to this country and belonging to the milkweed family, Asclepiadaceae. It is erect and rather stiff in habit, but with brilliant heads of bright orange-colored flowers that attract attention from afar. The stems are rather stout, erect, hairy, about 1 to 2 feet in height, sometimes branched near the top, and bearing a thick growth of leaves. These are either stemless or borne on short stems, are somewhat rough to the touch, 2 to 6 inches long, lance-shaped or oblong, the apex either sharp-pointed or blunt, with a narrow, rounded, or heart-shaped base. The flower heads, borne at the ends of the stem and branches, consist of numerous oddly shaped orange-colored flowers. The corolla is composed of 5 segments, which are reflexed or turned back, and the crown has 5 erect or spreading hoods, within each of which is a slender incurved horn. The plant is in flower for some time, usually from June to September, followed late in the fall by pods, which are from 4 to 5 inches long, green, tinged with red, finely hairy on the outside, and containing the seeds with their long silky hairs. Unlike the other milkweeds, the pleurisy root contains little or no milky juice. Description of root. The root of this plant is large, white, and fleshy, spindle-shaped, branching. As found in commerce, it consists of lengthwise or crosswise pieces from 1 to 6 inches in length, and about 3/4 of an inch in thickness. It is wrinkled lengthwise and also transversely, and has a knotty head. The thin bark is orange-brown, and the wood yellowish, with white rays. It has no odor, and a somewhat bitter, acrid taste. Collection, prices, and uses. The root, which is usually found rather deep in the soil, is collected in autumn, cut into transverse or lengthwise slices, and dried. The price ranges from 6 to 10 cents a pound. Pleurisy root was much esteemed by the Indians, has long been used in domestic practice and is official in the United States pharmacopoeia. It is used in disordered digestion and in affections of the lungs, in the last named instance to promote expectoration, relieve pains in the chest, and induce easier breathing. It is also useful in producing perspiration. Other species. Besides the official pleurisy root, there are 2 other species of Asclepias which are employed to some extent for the same purposes, namely the common milkweed and the swamp milkweed. The common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, is a perennial, native in fields and waste places from Canada to North Carolina and Kansas. It has a stout, usually simple stem, 3 to 5 feet in height, and oblong or oval leaves, smooth on the upper surface and densely hairy beneath. The flowers, similar in form to those of Asclepias tuberosa, are pinkish purple and appear from June to August, followed by erect pods 3 to 5 inches long, woolly with matted hair and covered with prickles and borne on recurved stems. The plant contains an abundance of milky juice. The root of the common milkweed is from 1 to 6 feet long, cylindrical and finely wrinkled. The short branches and scars left by former stems give the root a round, knotty appearance. The bark is thick, grayish-brown, and the inside white, the root breaking with a short, splintery fracture. Common milkweed root has a very bitter taste, but no odor. It is collected in autumn and cut into transverse slices before drying. Common milkweed ranges from 6 to 8 cents a pound. Swamp milkweed, Asclepias incarnata, is a native perennial herb found in swamps from Canada to Tennessee and Kansas. The slender stem, leafy to the top, is 1 to 2 feet in height, branched above. The leaves lance-shaped or oblong, lance-shaped. The flowers, also similar to those in Asclepias tuberosa, appear from July to September and are flesh-colored or rose-colored. The pods are 2 to 3½ inches long, erect, and very sparingly hairy. The root of the swamp milkweed, which is also collected in autumn, is not quite an inch in length, hard and knotty, with several light brown rootlets. The tough white wood, which has a thick central pith, is covered with a thin yellowish-brown bark. It is practically without odor, and the taste, sweetish at first, finally becomes bitter. This root brings about 3 cents a pound. End of chapter 32, read by Sandra in Canada, 2025. Chapter 33 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Rich soil plants. Bloodroot. Sanguinaria canadensis. Pharmacopoeia sanguinaria. Other common names: red root, red puccoon, red Indian paint, puccoon root, coon root, white puccoon, pawson, snakebite, sweet slumber, tetterwort, turmeric. Habitat and range. Bloodroot is found in rich, open woods from Canada south to Florida and west to Arkansas and Nebraska. Description of plant. This indigenous plant is among the earliest of our spring flowers, the waxy white blossom enfolded by the grayish-green leaf, usually making its appearance early in April. The stem and root contain a blood-red juice. Bloodroot is a perennial and belongs to the same family as the opium poppy, the Papaveracea. Each bud on the thick horizontal rootstock produces but a single leaf and a flowering scape, reaching about 6 inches in height. The plant is smooth, and both stem and leaves, especially when young, present a grayish-green appearance, being covered with a bloom such as is found on some fruits. The leaves are palmately 5 to 9 lobed, the lobes either cleft at the apex or having a wavy margin, and are borne on leaf stems about 6 to 14 inches long. After the plants have ceased flowering, the leaves, at first only 3 inches long and 4 to 5 inches broad, continue to expand until they're about 4 to 7 inches long and 6 to 12 inches broad. The underside of the leaf is paler than the upper side and shows prominent veins. The flower measures about 1 inch across, is white, rather wax-like in appearance, with numerous golden-yellow stamens in the center. The petals soon fall off, and the oblong, narrow seed pod develops, attaining a length of about 1 inch. Description of rootstock. When dug out of the ground, bloodroot is rather thick, round and fleshy, slightly curved at the ends, and contains a quantity of blood-red juice. It is from 1 to 4 inches in length, from 1/2 to 1 inch in thickness, externally reddish-brown, internally a bright red blood color, and produces many thick orange-colored rootlets. The rootstock shrinks considerably in drying, the outside turning dark brown and the inside orange-red or yellowish, with numerous small red dots, and it breaks with a short, sharp fracture. It has but a slight odor, and the taste is bitter and acrid, and very persistent. The powdered root causes sneezing. Collection, prices, and use. The rootstock should be collected in autumn, after the leaves have died, and after curing it should be stored in a dry place, as it rapidly deteriorates if allowed to become moist. Age also impairs its acridity. The price paid to collectors for this root ranges from about 5 to 10 cents per pound. Bloodroot was well known to the American Indians, who used the red juice as a dye for skins and baskets, and for painting their faces and bodies. It is official in the United States Pharmacopoeia and is used as a tonic, alterative, stimulant, and emetic. Pinkroot. Spigelia marilandica. Pharmacopoeal name, Spigelia. Other common names, Carolina pinkroot, pinkroot, Carolina pink, Maryland pink, Indian pink, star bloom, wormgrass, wormweed, American wormroot. Habitat and range. This pretty little plant is found in rich woods from New Jersey to Florida, west to Texas and Wisconsin, but occurring principally in the southern states. It is fast disappearing, however, from its native haunts. Description of plant. Pinkroot belongs to the same family as the yellow jasmine, namely the Logania family, Loganaceae, noted for its poisonous species. It is a native perennial herb with simple, erect stem 6 inches to 1½ feet high, nearly smooth. The leaves are stemless, generally ovate, pointed at the apex and rounded or narrowed at the base. They are from 2 to 4 inches long, 1/2 to 2 inches wide, smooth on the upper surface, and only slightly hairy on the veins on the lower surface. The rather showy flowers are produced from May to July in a terminal one-sided spike. They are from 1 to 2 inches in length, somewhat tube-shaped, narrowed below, slightly inflated toward the center and again narrowed or contracted toward the top, terminating in 5 lance-shaped lobes. The flowers are very showy with their brilliant coloring, bright scarlet on the outside and the inside of the tube, and the lobes a bright yellow. The seed capsule is double, consisting of 2 globular portions more or less united, and containing numerous seeds. Description of rootstock. The rootstock is rather small, from 1 to 2 inches in length and about 1/16 of an inch in thickness. It is somewhat crooked or bent, dark brown with a roughened appearance of the upper surface caused by cup-shaped scars, the remains of former annual stems. The lower surface and the sides have numerous, long, finely branched, lighter-colored roots which are rather brittle. Pinkroot has a pleasant aromatic odor, and the taste is described as sweetish, bitter, and pungent. Collection, prices, and uses. Pinkroot is collected after the flowering period. It is said to be scarce, and was reported as becoming scarce as long ago as 1830. The price paid to collectors ranges from 25 to 40 cents a pound. The roots of other plants, notably those of the East Tennessee pinkroot, Ruellia ciliosa, are often found mixed with the true pinkroot, and the Ruellia ciliosa is even substituted for it. This alteration or substitution probably accounts for the inertness which has sometimes been attributed to the true pinkroot, and which has caused it to fall into more or less disuse. It has long been known that the true pinkroot was adulterated, but this adulteration was supposed to be caused by the admixture of Carolina phlox, Phlox carolina, now known as Phlox ovata, but this is said now to be no part of the substitution. The rootstock of Ruellia ciliosa is larger and not as dark as that of the Maryland pinkroot, and has fewer and coarser roots, from which the bark readily separates, leaving the whitish wood exposed. Pinkroot was long known by the Indians, and its properties were made known to physicians by them. It is official in the United States pharmacopoeia and is used principally as an anthelmintic. Indian physic. Porteranthus trifoliatus. Synonym: Gilenia trifoliata. Other common names: Gilenia, Bowman's root, false ipecac, western dropwort, Indian hippo. Habitat and range. Indian physic is native in rich woods from New York to Michigan, south to Georgia and Missouri. Description of plant. The reddish stems of this slender, graceful perennial of the rose family, Rosaceae, are about 2 to 3 feet high, several erect and branched stems being produced from the same root. The leaves are almost stemless and trifoliate, that is, composed of 3 leaflets. They are ovate or lanceolate, 2 to 3 inches long, narrowed at the base, smooth and toothed. The nodding, white, pinkish flowers are few, produced in loose terminal clusters from May to July. The 5 petals are long, narrowed or tapering toward the base, white or pinkish, and inserted in the tubular, somewhat bell-shaped, red-tinged calyx. The seed pods are slightly hairy. At the base of the leaf stems are small leaf-like parts called stipules, which in this species are very small, linear, and entire. In the following species, which is very similar to Trifoliatus and collected with it, the stipules, however, are so much larger that they form a prominent character, which has given rise to its specific name, stipulatus. Porteranthus stipulatus, Britain, synonym Gilenia stipulacea, is found in similar situations as Porteranthus trifoliatus, but generally farther west, its range extending from western New York to Indiana and Kansas, south to Alabama, Louisiana, and Indian Territory. The general appearance of this plant is very similar to that of Porteranthus trifoliatus. It grows to about the same height, but is generally more hairy, the leaflets narrower and more deeply toothed, and the flowers perhaps a trifle smaller. The stipules, however, will generally serve to distinguish it. These are large, broad, ovate, acute at the apex, sharply and deeply notched, and so much like leaves that but for their position at the base of the leaf stems they might easily be mistaken for them. With the exception of the name American ipecac applied to this plant, the common names of Porteranthus trifoliatus are also used for Porteranthus stipulatus. The roots of both species are collected and used for the same purpose. Description of roots. The root Porteranthus trifoliatus is thick and knotty, with many smoothish, reddish, brown rootlets. The latter, in drying, become wrinkled lengthwise and showing a few transverse fissures or breaks in the bark, and the interior white and woody. There's practically no odor, and the woody portion is tasteless, but the bark, which is readily separable, is bitter, increasing the flow of saliva. Porteranthus stipulatus has a larger, more knotty root, with rootlets that are more wavy, constricted or marked with numerous transverse rings, and the bark fissured or breaking from the white woody portion at frequent intervals. Collection, prices, and uses. The roots of both species are collected in autumn. The prices range from 2 to 4 cents a pound. Indian physic, or Bowman's root, as these names imply, was a popular remedy with the Indians, who used it as an emetic. From them the white settlers learned of its properties, and it is still used for its emetic action. This drug was at one time official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1880. Its action is said to resemble that of ipecac. Wild sarsaparilla, Arola nudicollis. Other common names: false sarsaparilla, Virginia sarsaparilla, American sarsaparilla, small spikenard, rabbit's root, shotbush, wild licorice. Habitat and range. Wild sarsaparilla grows in rich, moist woods from Newfoundland west to Manitoba and south to North Carolina and Missouri. Description of plant. This native herbaceous perennial belonging to the Ginseng family, Araliaceae, produces a single long-stalked leaf and flowering stalk from a very short stem, both surrounded or sheathed at the base by thin, dry scales. The leaf stalk is about 12 inches long, divided at the top into 3 parts, each division bearing 5 oval, toothed leaflets from 2 to 5 inches long, the veins on the lower surface sometimes hairy. The naked flowering stalk bears 3 spreading clusters of small greenish flowers, each cluster consisting of from 12 to 30 flowers, produced from May to June, followed later in the season by purplish-black roundish berries about the size of the common elderberries. Description of rootstock. Wild sarsaparilla rootstock has a very fragrant aromatic odor. Rabbits are said to be very fond of it, whence one of the common names rabbit's root is derived. The rootstock is rather long, horizontally creeping, somewhat twisted, and yellowish-brown on the outside. The taste is warm and aromatic. The dried rootstock is brownish, grey, and wrinkled lengthwise on the outside, about 1/4 of an inch in thickness. The inside whitish with a spongy pith. The taste is sweetish and somewhat aromatic. Collection, prices, and uses. The root of wild sarsaparilla is collected in autumn and brings from 5 to 8 cents a pound. This has long been a popular remedy, both among the Indians and domestic practice, and was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1880. Its use is that of an alterative, stimulant, and diaphoretic, and in this it resembles the official sarsaparilla obtained from tropical America. Similar species. The American spikehead, Aralia racemosa, known also as spignut, spiceberry, Indian root, petimoral, life of man, and old man's root, is employed like Aralia nudicalis. It is distinguished from this by its taller, herbaceous habit, its much-branched stem from 3 to 6 feet high, and very large leaves consisting of thin, oval, heart-shaped, double saw-toothed leaflets. The small, greenish flowers are arranged in numerous clusters instead of only 3 as in nudicalis, and also appear somewhat later, namely from July to August. The berries are roundish, reddish-brown or dark purple. The rootstock is shorter than that of nudicalis and much thicker, with prominent stem scars, and furnished with numerous very long, rather thin roots. The odor and taste are stronger than in nudicalis. It is also collected in autumn, and brings from 4 to 8 cents a pound. The American spikenard occurs in similar situations as nudicalis, but its range extends somewhat farther south, Georgia being given as a southern limit. The California spikenard, Aralia californica, may be used for the same purpose as the other species. The plant is larger than Aralia racemosa, but otherwise is very much like it. The root is also larger than that of Aralia racemosa. End of chapter 33, read by Sandra in Canada, 2025.
Chapter 34 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Sofia Goodart. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Section 34. Chapter 34. Medicinal Herbs. American Angelica. Angelica atropurpurea L. Synonym: Archangelica atropurpurea Hoffen. Other common names: Angelica, purple-stemmed Angelica, Great Angelica, High Angelicam, Purple Angelica, Masterwort. Habitat and range. American Angelica is a native herb, common in swamps and damp places from Labrador to Delaware and west to Minnesota. Description of plant. This strong-scented, tall, stout perennial reaches a height of from 4 to 6 feet, with a smooth, dark purple, hollow stem 1 to 2 inches in diameter. The leaves are divided into 3 parts, each of which is again divided into threes. The rather thin segments are oval or ovate, somewhat acute, sharply toothed, and sometimes deeply cut, and about 2 inches long. The lower leaves sometimes measure 2 feet in width, while the upper ones are smaller, but all have very broad expanded stalks. The greenish-white flowers are produced from June to July in somewhat roundish, many-rayed umbels or heads, which sometimes are 8 to 10 inches in diameter. The fruits are smooth, compressed, and broadly oval. American Angelica root is branched, from 3 to 6 inches long and less than an inch in diameter. The outside is light brownish-gray with deep furrows, and the inside nearly white, the whole breaking with a short fracture and the thick bark showing fine resin dots. It has an aromatic odor, and the taste at first is sweetish and spicy, afterwards bitter. The fresh root is said to possess poisonous properties. The root of the European or garden angelica, Angelica officinalis Mensch, supplies much of the angelica root of commerce. This is native in northern Europe and is very widely cultivated, especially in Germany, for the root. Collection, prices, and uses. The root is dug in autumn and carefully dried. Care is also necessary in preserving the root, as it is very liable to the attacks of insects. American Angelica root ranges from 6 to 10 cents a pound. American Angelica root, which was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1860, is used as an aromatic, tonic, stimulant, carminative, diuretic, and diaphoretic. In large doses, it acts as an emetic. The seeds are also employed medicinally. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale L. Other common names: Symphytum, healing herb, knitback, ass ear, backwort, blackwort, bruisewort, gum plant, slippery root. Habitat and range. Comfrey is naturalized from Europe and occurs in waste places from Newfoundland to Minnesota, south to Maryland. Description of plant. This coarse, rough, hairy, perennial herb is from 2 to 3 feet high, erect and branched, with thick, rough leaves, the lower ones ovate, lance-shaped, 3 to 10 inches long, pointed at the apex, and narrowed at the base into margined stems. The uppermost leaves are lance-shaped, smaller and stemless. Comfrey is in flower from June to August. The purplish or dirty white, tubular, bell-shaped flowers, numerous and borne in dense terminal clusters. The nutlets which follow are brown, shinning and somewhat wrinkled. Comfrey belongs to the borage family, Boraginaceae. Description of root. Comfrey has a large, deep, spindle-shaped root, thick and fleshy at the top, white inside, and covered with a thin, blackish-brown bark. The dried root is hard, black, and very deeply and roughly wrinkled, breaking with a smooth, white, waxy fracture. As it occurs in commerce, it is in pieces ranging from about an inch to several inches in length, only about 1/4 of an inch in thickness, and usually considerably bent. It has a very mucilaginous, somewhat sweetish, and astringent taste, but no odor. Collection, prices, and uses. The root is dug in autumn, or sometimes in early spring. Comfrey root, when first dug, is very fleshy and juicy, but about 4/5 of its weight is lost in drying. The price ranges from 4 to 8 cents a pound. The mucilaginous character of comfrey root renders it useful in coughs and diarrheal complaints. Its action is demulcent and slightly astringent. The leaves are also used to some extent. Elecampane, Inula helenium L. Other common names: Inula, Inul, horseheel, elfdock, elfwort, horse elder, scabwort, yellow starwort, velvet dock, wild sunflower. Habitat and range. This perennial herb has been naturalized from Europe and is found along the roadsides and in fields and damp pastures from Nova Scotia to North Carolina, westward to Missouri and Minnesota. It is a native also in Asia. Description of plant. When in flower, elecampane resembles the sunflower on a small scale. Like the sunflower, it is a member of the aster family, Asteraceae. It is a rough plant growing from 3 to 6 feet in height, but producing during the first year only root leaves, which attain considerable size. In the following season, the stout, densely hairy stem develops, attaining a height of from 3 to 6 feet. The leaves are broadly oblong in form, toothed, the upper surface rough, and the underside densely soft hairy. The basal or root leaves are borne on long stems and are from 10 to 20 inches long and 4 to 8 inches wide, while the upper leaves are smaller and stemless or clasping. About July to September, the terminal flower heads are produced, either singly or a few together. As already stated, these flower heads look very much like small sunflowers, 2 to 4 inches broad, and consist of long, narrow yellow rays, 3-toothed at the apex, and the disc also is yellow. Description of root. Elecampane has a large, long, branching root, pale yellow on the outside and whitish and fleshy within. When dry, the outside turns a grayish-brown or dark brown, and is generally finely wrinkled lengthwise. As found in commerce, elecampane is usually in transverse or lengthwise slices, light yellow or grayish, and fleshy internally, dotted with numerous shining resin cells, and with overlapping brown or wrinkled bark. These slices become flexible in damp weather and tough, but when they are dry they break with a short fracture. The root has at first a strongly aromatic odor, which has been described by some as resembling a violet odor, but this diminished in drying. The taste is aromatic, bitterish, and pungent. Collection, prices, and uses. The best time for collecting elecampane is in the fall of the second year. If collected later than that, the roots are apt to be stringy and woody. Owing to the interlacing habit of the rootlets, much dirt adheres to the root, but it should be well cleaned, cut into transverse or lengthwise slices, and carefully dried in the shade. Collectors receive from 3 to 5 cents a pound for this root. Elecampane, which was official in the United States Pharmacopoeia of 1890, is much used in affections of the respiratory organs, in digestive and liver disorders, catarrhal discharges, and skin diseases. Queen of the meadow, Eupatorium purpureum. Other common names: gravel root, Indian gravel root, Joe Pye weed, purple boneset, tall boneset, kidney root, king of the meadow, marsh milkweed, motherwort, quillwort, slunkweed, trumpetweed. Habitat and range. This common native perennial herb occurs in low grounds and dry woods and meadows from Canada to Florida and Texas. Description of plant. The stout, erect, green or purple stem of this plant grows from 3 to 10 feet in height and is usually smooth, simple, or branched at the top. The thin, veiny leaves are 4 to 12 inches long, 1 to 3 inches wide, ovate or ovate lance-shaped, sharp-pointed, toothed, and placed around the stem in whorls of 3 to 6. While the upper surface of the leaves is smooth, there is usually a slight hairiness along the veins on the lower surface, otherwise smooth. Toward the latter part of the summer and in early fall, Queen of the Meadow is in flower, producing 5 to 15 flowered pink or purplish heads, all aggregated in large compound clusters, which present a rather showy appearance. This plant belongs to the aster family, Asteraceae. Another species which is collected with this and for similar purposes, and by some regarded as only a variety, is the spotted boneset or spotted Joe Pye weed, Eupatorium maculatum L. This is very similar to E. purpureum, but it does not grow so tall, is rough hairy, and has the stem spotted with purple. The thicker leaves are coarsely toothed and in whorls of 3 to 5, and the flower clusters are flattened at the top rather than elongated as in E. purpureum. It is found in moist soil from New York to Kentucky, westward to Kansas, New Mexico, Minnesota, and as far up as British Columbia. Description of root. Queen of Meadow root, as it occurs in commerce, is blackish and woody, furnished with numerous long, dark brown fibers, which are furrowed or wrinkled lengthwise, and whitish within. It has a bitter, aromatic, and astringent taste. Collection, prices, and uses. The root is collected in autumn and is used for its astringent and diuretic properties. It was official in the United States pharmacopoeia from 1820 to 1840. The price ranges from 2.5 to 4 cents a pound. End of chapter 34. Read by Sofia Goodart, Pinckney, Michigan, April 25th, 2025.
Chapter 35 of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Larry Wilson. Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A.R. Harding. Medicinal Shrubs. Hydrangea. Hydrangea arborescens L. Other common names: wild hydrangea, 7 barks. Habitat range. Hydrangea frequents rocky river banks and ravines from the southern part of New York to Florida and westward to Iowa and Missouri, being especially abundant in the valley of the Delaware and southward. Description of plant. Hydrangea is an indigenous shrub, 5 to 6 feet or more in height, with weak twigs, slender leaf stems, and thin leaves. It belongs to the hydrangea family, Hydrangeaceae. The leaves are oval or sometimes heart-shaped, 3 to 6 inches long, sharply toothed, green on both sides, the upper smooth and the lower sometimes hairy. The shrub is in flower from June to July, producing loose branching terminal heads of small greenish-white flowers, followed by membranous, usually 2-celled capsules, which contain numerous seeds. Sometimes hydrangea will flower a second time early in fall. A peculiar characteristic of this shrub, and one that has given rise to the common name 7 barks, is the peeling off of the stem bark, which comes off in several successive layers of thin, different-colored bark. Description of root. The root is roughly branched, and when first taken from the ground is very juicy, but after drying it becomes hard. The smooth white and tough wood is covered with a thin, pale yellow or light brown bark, which readily scales off. The wood is tasteless, but the bark has a pleasant aromatic taste, becoming somewhat pungent. Collection, prices, and uses. Hydrangea root is collected in autumn, and as it becomes very tough after drying and difficult to bruise, it is best to cut the root in short transverse pieces while it is fresh and still juicy, and dry it in this way. The price ranges from 2 to 7 cents a pound. Hydrangea has diuretic properties and is said to have been much used by the Cherokees and early settlers in calculus complaints. Oregon grape, Berberis aquifolium Percy. Pharmacopoeial name, berberis. Other common names: Rocky Mountain grape, holly-leaved barberry, California barberry, trailing mahonia. Habitat and range. This shrub is native in woods and rich soil among rocks from Colorado to the Pacific Ocean, but is especially abundant in Oregon and Northern California. Description of plant. Oregon grape is a low-growing shrub resembling somewhat the familiar Christmas holly of the eastern states, and in fact was first designated as mountain holly by members of the Lewis and Clark expedition on their way through the western country. It belongs to the barberry family, Berberaceae, and grows about 2 to 6 feet in height, the branches sometimes trailing. The leaves consist of from 5 to 9 leaflets, borne in pairs, with an odd leaflet at the summit. They are from 2 to 3 inches long and about 1 inch wide, evergreen, thick, leathery, oblong or oblong ovate in outline, smooth and shining above, the margins provided with thorny spines or teeth. The numerous small yellow flowers appear in April or May and are borne in erect clustered heads. The fruit consists of a cluster of blue or bluish-purple berries having a pleasant taste, and each containing from 3 to 9 seeds. Other species. While Berberis aquifolium is generally designated as the source of Oregon grapefruit, other species of Berberis are met with in the market under the name grapefruit, and their use is sanctioned by the United States Pharmacopoeia. The species most commonly collected with Berberis aquifolium is B. nervosa Pursh, which is also found in woods from California northward to Oregon and Washington. This is 9 to 17 inches in height, with a conspicuously jointed stem and 11 to 17 bright green leaflets. Another species of Berberis, B. pinnata lag, attains a height of from a few inches to 5 feet, with from 5 to 9, but sometimes more leaflets, which are shining above and paler beneath. This resembles aquifolium very closely and is often mistaken for it, but it is said that it has not been used by the medical profession unless in local practice. The root also is about the same size of that of aquifolium, while the root of nervosa is smaller. Some works speak of Berberis repens lindell as another species often collected with aquifolium, but in the latest botanical manuals no such species is recognized, B. repens being given simply as a synonym for B. aquifolium. Description of rootstock. The rootstock of roots of Oregon grape are more or less knotty, in irregular pieces of varying lengths and about an inch or less in diameter, with brownish bark and hard and tough yellow wood, showing a small pith and narrow rays. Oregon grape root has a very bitter taste and very slight odor. Collection, prices, and uses. Oregon grape root is collected in autumn and brings from 10 to 12 cents a pound. The bark should not be removed from the rootstocks, as the Pharmacopoeia directs that such roots be rejected. This root has long been used in domestic practice throughout the West as a tonic and blood purifier, and is now official in the United States Pharmacopoeia. The berries are used in making preserves and cooling drinks. End of chapter 35. End of Ginseng and Other Medicinal Plants by A. R. Harding.